Hi, I'm Sherazad, and I've got a great panel topic today, which is about how to embrace women's superpowers in tech. And with me, I've got three distinguished panelists. We've got Chandi Dharmaratne, the Vice President of HR at a global IT company and Chairperson of Lanka Angel Network. I've got Ruwindhu Peiris, Managing Director of Stacks and Co-founder of Sri Lanka at 100. And Sandra de Zoysa, the Chief Customer Officer at Dialogue Axiata and Chairperson of Slascom. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's great to be with you. I'll start right at the beginning. Get right to the topic. When we say women superpowers in tech, we don't really mean that women have superpowers, right? What do we really mean?
You're asking me that question, right? So I think really I strongly believe that men and women have equal superpowers, and it's just a matter of how you use them. For instance, I think even being empathetic these days is a superpower. Being able to solve problems, on the go, on your feet, is a superpower. Being able to collaborate and be able to get everyone focused on an agenda could be a superpower. It could be that you are great at keeping to time, managing projects. And above all, for me especially, it is a superpower to, not just for women again, for me to be able to know the subject that I'm dealing with and to be good at it rather than, not know what it's all about. So I want that. And of course, the relational skills to really be able to benefit from getting a team together, working together in a cohesive manner. There has to be transparency and there has to be comfort working together. So your relationship skills, I think, are really important as well.
So great things are happening in terms of inclusion, in terms of kind of bringing in people and making the workplace a more diverse and more inclusive place. What are the great successes that you've seen, and how have women benefited from these great strides?
Well, everyone these days is talking about work from home. It's like the buzzword. For me, it's like really remote work. It doesn't have to be from home. So some of the things that we do and we're encouraging is, people can come to work in office. They can also work from home. But if they like to work on the beach or, go elsewhere, we are also setting up satellite offices so that they can kind of just get to a remote workplace that's closer to them, and then work out of there rather than coming all the way, let's say, to headquarters, which might be, in Colombo and so on. And also a couple of other things we're doing. We're bringing women who left the workplace because they were fantastic, but they had to take a break because they had kids or they didn't have anyone looking after their kids, right? Or they opted to spend time with their kids and then come back in when the kids were much older. So we're calling them all back and trying to bring them in, saying, now's your time. Come work on assignment-based, work flex hours, work contract, part-time, pick the way you want to work, but do come and, give off your best, those stuff that we really enjoyed having you for and valued in you. So bring it all back. So that's another thing that we're doing. And generally focusing a lot on well-being and wellness and employee engagement. In fact, it's one of the initiatives that I'm leading also this year is employee engagement, employee experience management, and culture transformation. So it's a lot of exciting things happening around all of that. And it obviously includes a lot of diversity, inclusion parts of the agenda as well.
Can I maybe just think to pick on something that Sandra mentioned, and I do agree. I think if you reframe the topic about superpowers of female in tech, I would almost kind of reframe it to say I think tech as an industry really enables to bring out the superpowers in both males and females. I think that really is the framing of it, right? I think, and what that does is it truly has become an equalizer. Certain industries and certain other situations in the past, I think, have tilted it to be relatively unfair, in particular for females, in what the demands of the work has been, right? If you think of the age that we're in right now, a lot of people turn to the age that we're in right now to be the age of imagination, right? And that's really led by technology and the industry that we're in right now. And if you think about what's the determinant of success in this age of imagination, it's really mindset, right? If you go back earlier in the knowledge industry, which a lot of people still think we're in, the differentiation was access to digital, right? We're past that in many ways, right? I think people like dialogue and so many other models have come into play, which have really enabled it to be where access to digital is by and large there. But in the age of imagination, it's all about mindset. And I think that really brings out the best of each human superpower, right? A true superpower as a human species is truly a mindset, not everything else. And I think that's really what everything that Sandra mentioned, I think, is forced upon us right now, that flexibleness in terms of bringing out your best at your own terms is now really prevalent in the IT industry. So I think part of it is, while there are real challenges, and I think we'll get into that all of us have, whether they be unconscious biases, certain conscious biases, and, conscious things that we need to do better. I think another flip side of it is also how do we engage a lot of the females in particular that I think may not have thought about this industry in the right light. And they might be still, with preconceived notions of things being a deterrent, whereas things have changed and they've rapidly changed. In the last 2 months, things have changed. So maybe that's another way to kind of look at it.
I think this is an area that Chandi has talked about quite a bit. Anything that you'd like to share?
So from that question about superpowers, do women have a certain set of superpowers? So how I obviously agree with Ruwindhu and Sandra, and to add on a little bit more to it, is definitely I think women have a set of superpowers and men have their set of superpowers, and everybody else, they have a set of superpowers. So the superpowers tend to be, most of the research shows that women are more empathetic, high on EQ, adaptability, great multitasking. So this is what research shows, that women have those at a higher level than men. And like we mentioned earlier, a lot of research shows that diversity of gender helps a board to be more effective. So hence, it's clearly that everybody brings their set of superpowers. And the key thing is to make sure that we identify it and we nurture it and we understand there is a set of superpowers, or I would call it a set of soft skills or competencies that women do bring in, and to make sure it's been built upon for the betterment of the organization. So if you don't have that diversity in your company, you're going to lose out, because you're going to only work with a certain set of skill set to make decisions and grow your company.
Can I just add something to it?
Jump right in.
So when you talk about superpowers, for me, I always encourage my team to actually understand, your strengths and also understand your weaknesses, and to be transparent about it with your team. So what that does is then everyone knows where someone else has a strength and where they need to support when the need arises, right? Without being asked or told. So for instance, let's say if I don't really like, speaking up on stage, and I'm just saying that's just the opposite. But if that was the case, then someone else would jump in for me. I may write the stuff or do the presentation, and someone else will actually, go out there on my behalf, and so on. So what I want is for people to be transparent, accepting, and know that it's all right to have weaknesses and to be open about it. Like, for instance, my team, they know all my, stuff I don't like and can't do too well, and they know what I can. And then I'm very open about it. I say, here, this is something that, how I hate it. And I say, please sort it out for me because you're the best. So we all know each other's strengths. So that really, really helps in getting comfortable and bringing out the best in everyone.
But for women who, may not see themselves as leaders, and who may not identify what their superpowers are, and who may need a little bit more of a nudge, more reminders, how do you tackle those situations, and what is the message that you're putting out there?
So that's why I said, if they don't identify it or they don't think they have it, we're constantly talking about it. So you accept what you have, and you build upon it. You accept what you don't have, and then you seek help if it's something that you want to build on. Now, if you decide that that's even not something you want to do, you don't have to go step in that space. Someone else can do that for you, right? And you pick up what's comfortable and what you want to deal with. For me, it's just that, you try to learn something new every day, because our whole lives, it has to be a situation where we never stop learning, and then we learn from each other, and then you also spend your own time doing what you can to further your knowledge. Sharing it also is a way in which you learn. So these are all the things that I kind of encourage for the teams, men and women, really. And just in the case of women, sometimes the men know it as well. We always say, they're shy. They need a special, just give them a nudge. So we're all used to knowing who needs a nudge at which point in time. Because we're all aware of each other's, Yeah. Go ahead, Ruwindhu.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, to me, if you bring it back to what are the distinguishing characteristics of the industry, right, that I think really lend themselves far more than any other industry to accommodate for potentially those situations, right? So if you think about it, generally speaking, you would say, hey, to be a good leader or to be participating, you need to be extroverted. You need to have a good command. You need to be able to lead. You need to be able to galvanize other people into something. You need to be able to have a strong point of view or something. I mean, those are typical characteristics of a good employee wanting to come and be there, right? And that's true for most industries. And if you don't have that, you are going to be left behind. That's just the reality of it, right? And knowledge, right? You take banking industry or insurance industry, it's a compounding value. If you've been in that throughout, and if someone who's taken 3 years off that industry and tries to come back in, you are at a disadvantage. That's just the reality. Someone who continued in it. Now, our industry, all of those structural realities of other industries don't exist, right? Shelf life of anything is so little. I mean, any of the technologies that are now hot didn't exist 2 years ago. So it didn't matter that you were not participating in the industry for the last 3 years or last 10 years. You could have not been in the industry for the last 10 years. You could be just coming in for the first time. And guess what? You're at an equal footing with someone who just picked up the same technology, right?
I think that would resonate as well from an HR perspective. How can HR professionals kind of support women as they come back? If they're taking time out and they've decided, no, I'm not going to throw the towel in, I'm going to come back. I think Sandra made a comment about how, they invite people back in and they do it maybe incrementally so that they gradually get there. What are the initiatives that you're seeing, Chandi, in your space?
So when you say women to come back, we're talking about come back from maternity
leave.
Okay. So what I've seen is a lot of women tend to take time off during maternity, and especially in our industry, when you come back, like Ruwindhu said, the only thing that you really need to be is relevant. And if you're not relevant, it's very difficult to get allocated, because you are always supposed to be working for a client, right? So the way that an organization, I think I've seen a lot of companies do this, where they make sure they stay in touch with the women who are during their maternity, and then when they come back, there's a lot of upskilling, cross-skilling, and reskilling that takes place. And I've seen even incentivizing and rewarding certain teams that actually go into taking and allocating women who will come back, because even after they come back, they do have other obligations which are priority for them, at least in the first year. So supporting them during the first year by having these programs internally to make them feel comfortable, even allocating HR partner who is now their specific HR partner who looks at all the women who have come back, because their needs and the issues that they have or the grievances they have would be a bit different during that time period. And also educating leaders and educating, their reporting managers on how that support should be given to these women. All that is there, all that is great. But at the same time, I truly believe that it has to be in the veins of your organization, right from the top, in the culture, that we're doing this because it is the right thing to do. So if you put a number on it and say, this is what we want to do, it has to be really inculcated into the way you do things in everything that you do. If you're having a leadership program, how do we have more women in that leadership program? Not just because we want to tick a box, but because we genuinely want to see more leaders come up in the organization. So I think you need to kind of, whilst you do so many initiatives and also data. So we say we want to do all of these things, but then how do you also measure success? And end of the day, what doesn't get measured doesn't also get done. So I think every leader should have a dashboard of whatever data that they think is important to measure. Have we really done what we were supposed to do? And I think those are the few things that, and I think from a tech perspective, and maybe we can come to that later, there's a lot of technology that has been implemented and is available now to make sure that we kind of support that women coming back and also having more women coming into the workforce as well in HR processes.
When women come back, Sandra, do you find them looking at kind of a range of options of how to come back? Are they looking at their 9 to 5 that they had before? Are they also looking at flexibility and entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship and various other kinds of ways to get back in?
Definitely, I think 9 to 5 is the most irrelevant. That's what we've always done. And that's what it didn't work. And that's why in the first place they had to take a break, right? Or leave. So flexibility, depending on the job roles, can be in many ways. You can choose the hours you want to work, right? For instance, I prefer to work the US times, although I don't have any clients in the US and they're all in Sri Lanka. Right? So yeah, I'm not a morning person. I'm happy to stay up and work till like 2:33 in the morning and then get my sleep. So it's and if that's what I prefer to do, and if that works perfectly well for me and for my organization, why not for everyone else too? So I'm a huge advocate of just get the job done. In fact, the teams that work with me, I've never actually said like, you need to apply for leave and get my permission first before you go. It's like, do whatever, take whenever. You guys decide when you want to take your annual leaves and all plan. And as long as there are people getting the work done, everything's fine. And you know what? They've never failed me. It's been fine, because everybody understands the way it needs to go. They know there are deadlines. They know they need to deliver. And what does it matter if they work 8 to 5 or 10 to 12 or, it doesn't really matter, right? What matters is that the job gets done. So that's really my focus. And what I'm trying to do, not just for the females, but everyone coming back into work. And by the way, it's not just the females. There are also some really good guys who left. And sometimes you kind of get to know that they are not very happy in their current workplace. And I try to say, like, if you want to, you can come back, if you enjoyed working with us. And you can take it in your stride. You can do assignment-based work, right? So to me, this 8 to 5 and this work thing, that never worked for me. And so I never really advocated it anyway. And I think we should all have the flexibility of getting everything done in the day, which includes cooking for the children, doing the homework with the kids if you have to, time off exercise, which of course I don't do. But I like to take time off to chit chat, socialize a lot, have fun with my friends and all of that, right? So I think, we just need to fit in everything that we want to in a day. And we know what's a priority for the day, right? This is work. Someone's sick in my family. I have to go attend to that. Forget work, So you got to just manage your priorities in a day. And nobody should dictate to you what time you need to do what. You should know better what your deliverables are and what time you need to get it out and get it done with.
Sorry, I was just going to, and then you want to pick on something that you mentioned, which is really important though, I think, right? Is, this kind of with great power comes great responsibility context a bit. In this new age, I think, and this again is not anything to do with females or males, but I found that to take advantage of that, the prerequisite is as individuals, as employees, you need to have that accountability. You mentioned that word, right? I think to be able to take part in this and to be able to not do an 8 to 5 or not be, to have the ownership of saying, I'm going to take time as required. Well, you need to be part of the ecosystem. You cannot. And I think, you've been lucky where you've had it, but I'm sure there's also been a situation where not everyone is coming with that same mindset. And this is probably more of an Asian thing. I'm generalizing here when I say our schooling system to how we've been brought up has been a lot more entitled, right? You're told, if you study this in the curriculum and you do these 100 questions, you're going to get an A or you're going to get a B. That's how we've been taught up to now, right? So I think that bleeds into work sometimes, and people expect the work or the company to say, tell me, if I do these 10 things, am I going to be successful? The world's not that anymore, right? So it takes two hands to clap almost, I think. So while the organizations are enabling itself to be a lot more flexible, to allow for that, I think we also need to work heavily as an industry, as parents, as educators, to also equip the new workforce coming in, saying, you need to be equipped and ready to take ownership, to be accountable, to take part in this. And I agree. I think you brought up a very important point, relevance, right? I think the biggest risk that all of us have is being relevant. And if people don't do that, companies and employees, and the power base has really shifted over the last few years from employers to employees. The power base of really where gravitas of choice is now with the employees. And now to take advantage of that, they need to be a lot more accountable.
How do you see tech industry versus other industries, kind of how the tech industry is leading, or are they leading in this space?
I think so. And I think, again, I'd like to say it's because we have amazing people like ourselves in the tech industry. It isn't. Sure. That's exactly what it is right now. Yeah, exactly. But it isn't. I mean, honestly, it purely is a necessity being a mother of invention. It's really what it is, right? No other industry has forced this upon that constituency to be that. It literally, you do not exist. It's not because we are great leaders and we've thought, we have this epiphany of here's the new way of how humans are going to work. That's just what the clients demand. Value in our industry is created. The best thoughts, ideas, innovation take place in this. We spoke about diversity, right? And the research will say, if you choose not to bring that to the table, you will not be relevant as a company. It's very simple, right? If I am not bringing diverse ideas and if I'm not taking that to my clients, I might survive a quarter. Next quarter, guess what? There's going to be someone down the road who has done that more effectively. And that's why this industry is thrusting that upon us. Other industries, I think, have moats built around them. And those are getting broken, I'll tell you, right? There is no, because software is eating the world in many ways, right? So you're finding that it's going to seep into other industries. It's just manifested itself first within the tech industry. But you're going to fast find all these other industries that have had built these kind of perceptive moats that protect them from some of this. Those are disappearing. So it makes sense for every industry to kind of take part, look at what the IT industry is doing, and take a leaf from these and start getting ahead of it, I guess.
We're talking about how dynamic the tech industry is and how always on it is, right? And so when you take the speed of the industry and how relevance is so important, how do you work with the speed of how women are navigating their careers? Are they always on accelerate mode with pedal to the metal, or is there room for them to slow down and maneuver, and how do you see that, Chandi?
Okay, so I'm just going back to some of the conversations with Ruwindhu. Ruwindhu kept kind of putting a lot of importance on the relevance and talking about how important it is for individuals to take responsibility to be relevant as well. And then we've heard a lot from Sandra talking about the flexibility for women to come back. So if you kind of marry the two, you kind of have your answer. So I think the tech industry has a lot of freedom for women to come back into the industry. And there's a lot of growth happening in the industry as well. A lot of small companies, large companies. So you've got a lot of flexibility the way you want it, hours you want to work. So you've got some companies working for Australian timeline, some companies working for UK, some US. So there's a lot of freedom, and we see a lot of young women actually joining the IT industry because they kind of enjoy that. So coming back, when you're navigating your career, key thing is to understand that you should not throw your towel at any given point in your life, basically. I mean, your life is your stream, and then everything else is in the periphery. So your career comes in as one aspect of it. So I personally have advised young girls not to ever not to ever take a decision where you need to really throw the towel in order for you to stay in your career. Because sometimes the conversations go where they kind of compare, saying, younger person who was in the same batch is now having this job in another company at this level, and I'm still here. And then they go get married, have a baby. They are like, I don't think I could ever come and catch up because I'm way behind. I think the key thing is any career, whether it's the IT industry or anything, end of the day, it's life that we're living. So living that life, you need to make sure you do what is important to you and what makes you happy. And just make sure that you kind of make that work for you whilst you navigate your career. So sometimes there could be times where it is like this, where you're not having much growth because of multiple reasons. And then there is a time where you can do that. And then it's never going to be, going up the ladder and, then so what? Who cares, right? If you're not happy. So the key thing is that end of the day, you're happy in where you are, and you stay relevant to yourself and make sure that you're in a position whenever you want to do something that you're ready to do that. And that's how I see somebody's career in IT or any industry.
Do you think that women have the opportunity also to kind of shape their careers through other avenues like entrepreneurship? Sandra, do you want to talk about how even folks at Dialogue kind of look at that?
Definitely. So we have a program we started possibly 5 years back, which was looking at entrepreneurship. So not just for women, for men too. If you have a great idea, and also if it's something that's really associated with our ecosystem and something that has interest for Dialogue products, services, customers, it's an idea that they would like to go try out on their own. In fact, we would look at funding for them as well, and they can take a year or two out and build a business. And guess what? They can still sell back to our own ecosystem. So we go on a rev share model, and that way we support them. We get something out of it. There's something coming back to either the customers or to Dialogue, right, in some way. And so that's one thing. And the good part about it is if it doesn't work, they can come back into work. Of course, they may not have their old job, but they can certainly come back. They're assured of a job, and we will work through what needs to be done thereafter, depending on their skills and where they best fit in, right? So that's one scheme we have. Now, apart from that, I think for women, particularly now, entrepreneurship is something really lucrative because guess what? Everything's gone digital. There are the digital, business models now that are very supportive and very lucrative. Makes it so much easier for women to start off businesses, in that sense when compared to pre-COVID times, right? Even when you look at learning, right? Everything's gone virtual. You can do your degree program or any other skills you have, you can do all of that. And I know of young people who are studying 2, 3, 4 things at a time. In fact, I did the same thing in the last 2 years or so. I did multiple study programs. Right now I'm studying business psychology as well. So I'm sort of stuff I never did before COVID as much, because now I can do that. And I think it's just a good time to be in the tech industry, to be a woman in the tech industry, for trying out, going out there, learning new skills and, all that. I think it's a good time. There's never been a better time than now.
feeling that the tech industry is inclusive of people from different disciplines. So if anyone in the audience, anyone watching us or hearing us is inspired to join the tech industry, what would you say to them if they don't come from a tech background or a tech discipline?
So there's still so much more. If you want to go mainstream tech, so you can also do maybe now there are some new courses that have been introduced as well for full stack developers and so on. If you want to go mainstream, you can still get to it in a relatively short period of time. But if you want to go and look at other things, I know everyone's interested in AI and machine learning and cryptocurrency and all of that, right? So a lot of people are sort of educating themselves on those. But otherwise, there are also skills like design thinking, UI, UX, behavioral sciences, stuff in the periphery, right? And so you don't have to be really core tech. That are also equally interesting and I think very much in demand as well, right? So I think maybe Ruwindhu, you might probably want to add a little bit of your own thoughts into this, because this is an area that he sort of is really advocates and really passionate about.
I think it's important, and this is a classic example. I think in hindsight, maybe even the topic itself, I think we keep saying tech, right? But actually the broader thing is knowledge and innovation. And then, if you go back to even the SASCOM, all of us, when we were part of it, I think all three of us were actually part of SASCOM at the time, where we sat down and said, hey, we need to rename ourselves as not just the software society, but it was knowledge and innovation, because it's a much broader context, right? Tech is one aspect about it, right? And I think to everything that Sandra mentioned, what's evolved is you have no code or low code situations right now where you don't have to code. Candidly, coding has become a bit of a commodity right now, right? And you'll have AI creating AI. And, there's machine codes that are getting created. To answer your question directly, I think absolutely what's required is just thirst for knowledge, ability to connect the dots. So coming from very different backgrounds is a huge plus. Just being able to create value, I think, right? So understand how connections are happen across domains and industries, because at the end of the day, what people, you're solving general life, right? It's not about, so someone who doesn't have experience in adding value, no matter what industry, insurance to banking to agriculture to, think of it, tourism, doesn't matter where your last 10, 20, 30 years has been. If you can bring that and really kind of now say, hey, there's a better way for this to be done. Can this be done faster, better, cheaper? That's essentially what it is, right? The knowledge and innovation industry enables you to do anything faster, better, cheaper. And that's really the mindset to come in with, right? I think that's important.
And actually I have an experience with one of these young girls, and her conversation was but an idea that she had through talking to me, and then she's talking about metaverse. And she's knows, and she's not from a tech background, but what she has done is she's gone and learned everything about it. And she knows, she's done all the research. So the adding on to what Sandra said about entrepreneurship for women, it's much easier now, whether it's a man or a woman, because of access to information. You want to go learn about metaverse, all you need to do is really read about it, and you can see all the people who are working on it. You can follow them, you can talk to them, you can link with them, and you know how to stay relevant in what's happening. And also networking. Through access to information, world has also become smaller. You have so many social network platforms. And even if you take Sri Lanka, even within Sri Lanka, we have Lankan Angels Network, then you have the Venture Engine. So you have so many networks that are here as well who are connected globally. So I think it's a great time, whether it's a man or a woman, if you are hungry for it, thirsty for it, you have information there for you to learn everything that you want to learn about it, and even free training programs that are being offered, right?
But I think you bring up a great point, Chandi. I think, however, in my experience, what's happened, and because the cost of starting has also come down dramatically, I think there's a lot of people who are not giving it the due respect before they start up, right? This notion of fail successfully. Failure is the only guarantee, candidly, right? I think in some form or shape, you're definitely going to fail in something. And how do you pivot is really kind of what you need to do. But I think there's a lot of people who I've found who are now kind of romanticized about this startup idea or starting a company. It's the sexy thing to do, right? But, to your point, it's so democratized right now. Everyone has access to the same information. And if you are not equipping yourself, if you're not doing the hard yards, if you don't know how to create a Google Forms and do a basic survey and come to the table saying, here, I've segmented the market, here's the appetite. It's not just my boyfriend or my mother who bought my product. Do yourself a service and do a service to everyone else. Don't do a startup. Candidly. I mean, I know I might be coming across a bit harsh on this, but it's important to give this advice because I think I've found kids who are coming and saying, oh, I'm going to be the next biggest thing. For every successful Mark Zuckerberg story, there's a million that never even saw the light of day, right? So good, it doesn't mean that you have to be this billion-dollar company, but this notion of failing successfully, right? If it's hard to get into a job, that's a great way to say, I have an idea, I'm going to start doing this. You will potentially add value, right? You might have a better terms of engagement with a potential employee, but think of it in that context. Right, I think I've found a lot of people now who also just kind of startup is a cool thing, right? Because you're right, the ecosystem, Lanka Angel Network, Slascom, a whole bunch of ICTA, everyone has come and created a lot of facilities and enablement. The flip side is I think those who are taking advantage of it need to be a lot more responsible and thoughtful about it as well. For yourselves as well, it's a waste of time, right? You'll do 2 years of it, you wasted potential investors' money, gone through all of that. So it deserves the right respect and investment of time and energy, I guess.
Do you think that Sri Lanka has a lot more on the horizon? So, I mean, if you could leave folks with a positive note about, what is on the horizon for them. I think a lot of people are consumed with, negativity with the power cuts and, struggles with, finding different goods at the supermarket. What can you say to put them in that mindset where they're thinking about the horizon and what Sri Lanka has to offer and how they can drive innovation themselves?
So for me, I'll probably talk to you about everyone's talking about, so aren't you going to go away? Aren't you thinking of migrating? Aren't you thinking of getting a job elsewhere? All that stuff, right? For me, I always encourage everyone to do what you want to right here. I love Sri Lanka, regardless of all the, everything that goes on. Nothing lasts forever. I'm somebody who's very positive. I just whilst everything's happening, moaning and moping about those things don't really help, right? We are in a fantastic industry. For women, I think it's a great time. Now is a better time than any other time. And yes, we have the challenges. We will go through all these. All nations have ups and downs at some point in time and come out of it. They don't ever, get stuck there permanently, right, for the rest of your lives. And we are people who've come through the 3 decades of war and all that. If we can do that, I think we can do anything. So it's just to be able to keep your focus, stay positive. Please do a favor and don't talk to everybody else about all the negativity and spread negativity. Stay positive, talk about everything that's wonderful and so positive, right? This country is an amazing place. People are amazing, right? In every way, right? They are creative, they have imagination, they're hospitable, right? And we have great resources in terms of these beautiful, I always, when I go overseas and when I come back, I'm like, the moment I touch down, it's like, paradise. I'm coming back to paradise. I love it here. I love Sri Lanka and, I wouldn't really encourage someone. Of course, the young ones, it's always nice to go overseas, study, get a different, experience, and then come right back. So that's what I would always encourage. And because of that, I'd say that this is another stage, a challenging phase in our lives in this country, but certainly one that we're going to get over. It's not going to last forever. So stay positive, stay focused, and, keep on your path. And soon enough, and this story, I think it's so true, right? Through adversity, there are so many opportunities. And if you really look at it, through adversity, there have been so many people who have come out absolute winners because it was through adversity that they saw opportunities with which that they can, create something and make money as well that would not have been possible otherwise. So yeah, we just have to look for all those opportunities and stay on course.
Chandi, how about, always focusing on the opportunities? Your thoughts?
Yes, I think obviously you have to. You don't have a choice. You have to have a lot of grit, and you have to focus and I think personally you should focus on your. You need to focus on. I think at certain level, a lot of people can look at how we can actually make this place a better place, make the country better. And I think people like Sandra, who are on chair of SLASCOM, Ruwindhu, ex-chair of SLASCOM, and on so many boards and so many associations, and there are a lot of decisions that's been made, and I think there's a lot of work that all of us are doing to make sure that we make it better. But at the same time, I think it's a personal decision. If somebody wants to go and make their life better, I think they will do that, because right now their decisions are made upon their children or their immediate family and how they can give a better life for them. And I think you will always have that freedom, because now the world is smaller, information is all available, and they will link up even faster with any company globally and any, where they want to go. It's I think whilst we stay positive and we focus on, making, our lives here, there are people who might want to leave and make their lives better and then come back and contribute towards our country. But I think the key thing for me is patriotism towards the country, and no matter where you are, to see how you can support the country, support the different industries that we are in here to make it a better place for everyone.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the grass is always greener on the other side. That's what we've been told, right? But practical reality is the grass is greener where you water it. That's as simple as that, right? I think you guys said it beautifully. It's a choice, right? And I think we speak a lot about everyone who's leaving, but I can tell you personally from for Stax's context, there's quite a few people who are coming back, right? There's a lot of people who are in their early 40s, mid 40s, who are now done amazing things in their own fields in other countries, who are now coming back and saying, you know what? And then this COVID, I think, really forced a lot of this thinking, right? And they've really looked at the mirror and said, what am I really impacting? And three things, I think. And in many ways, if you, at least in my summarization, what everyone's kind of solving for, they might term it in different ways, but it's freedom, influence, and impact. Some form or shape, everyone's trying to kind of achieve these three things. And as you start answering those questions, I think Sri Lanka poses, to your point, I think a great opportunity to influence big things, make a huge impact, right? And in many ways, you have a tremendous amount of freedom. Now, obviously, you're going to have the sensational news stories. There's real stuff. There's power cuts. You need to take a long arc in some of this stuff, right? You need to kind of cast your net out and say, hey, what is it in 2048 as an example? That's what we've done with Sri Lanka 100 as an example, right? You could be complaining about today, tomorrow, but if you take a view and say, hey, when we reach 100 years of independence, 2048, all of a sudden, 27 years, oh my gosh, you're like a kid in a candy store. There's so much that can be done. If I don't think about just next year, but I start thinking about how do I influence the course of the country over a 27, 25-year period, whole bunch of ideas happen. And places like Sri Lanka are very unique, right? You think about it, there's probably 2,000 people that drive 80% of decisions in the country, 2 degrees separated in a 50-kilometer radius, right? If you have a potential to be part of that, okay, expand that to 20,000, right? That's huge relevance. You take India, you can't, I'm amazed. We had people from NASCOM come and talk to us. that board had people literally that seemed like from 10 different countries. They didn't speak the same common language. They were forced to, their native language was very different. They had to invest so much to get to know each other. This is from the, when we had the SASCOM board meet with the NASCOM board. Whereas for us, we were like, glove in a hand. We know each other so well. There was just so much that we didn't have to invest into building relationships, right? So our ability to make decisions, make impact was so much greater. Now, are we using that? Probably not enough, right? But I'm just saying there's a lot going for us right now, and not everyone has to stay. I think, you should go. But I think the narrative, to your point, I think what happens is media, sometimes it's very sensational. You start talking only about that, what's the party line, right? So all of us get caught up into the party line and complaining about stuff. There is on the other side, I'm just trying to kind of make sure that there is another whole growing movement of people. Each country, to your point, has its own wars and all stuff. There's another whole bunch of people coming back and making this place really amazing. I think we sometimes don't talk about those heroes and girls and guys who are coming back and not purely out of patriotism. From a very selfish perspective, they've seen the world and they said, compared to all of this, no place gives me freedom, influence and impact as much as Sri Lanka. It's not purely because they're doing it for selfless developing the country. It's for their own selves. They realize, my gosh, I'm really blessed if I can come and be here. So anyway, that's my thoughts. But I think there's
Ruwindhu, maybe I'm staying right here for the same reasons, for the same 3 reasons, right? Because I don't find as much of the same 3 reasons if I was somewhere else.
Precisely.
My daughter's always so for me and my daughter, it's like, Mom, you like to be a big fish in a small pond, whereas, I'm a small fish in a big pond. And, we're talking about which one's better, right? That's better for her. This is better for me. It just depends on what you like.
So I'm just bringing in a personal experience. I lived in the States for about 12 years and I'm also a citizen. So are my kids.
Sure.
And I made that conscious decision in 2001 to come back during the war. And whilst everyone in my family is like, you must be crazy to come back here. And I'm so happy that I came back. But the point is also everyone has they have their personal agendas and reasons to come back or not come back at any given point. But what we need to do is give them that opportunity and the 3 things that you talked about in different industries. So when I came back, I joined MS Holdings because they gave me that. And companies that are Virtusa and there are so many like Stacks and Dialogue, they give you that. So a lot of people stay back or come back and work for companies like that, which are truly global. And I think it's really important that we can give them that, especially for the young people who want to come back. So they feel like they can still work for a global company, right here. So the opportunities will make them come back.
Great point.
It was just such great points, and thank you so much for being so candid and for really giving our viewers such a lot to think about and for sharing your opinions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Randala, are you ready?
She slays with echelon.
Hi, I'm Nikita Samaratunga and I'll be talking to Randala De Silva on Thriving in the Unconventional on She Slays by Echelon. Can I ask you what trends you're into nowadays?
I am the trend.
Oh,
Nikita.
please say that.
Yes, we'll do.
Hi, I'm Sherazad, and I've got Chandi, Sandra, and Ruwindhu with me between takes, and I thought I'd sneak a chance to get to know them a little better. So we've got some questions for them. Let's see what they have to say. Sandra, the first one's to you. As a woman, what do you expect in a leader?
I would expect that a leader is humble, approachable, honest. So honest and sincere, actually. And decisive. I don't want to have to deal with people who aren't really quite sure what they're doing, what they don't know. So someone I can look up to, obviously. And lots more, but I think I'll leave those for now.
I'll do a second question to you as well. When you lead men particularly, do you experience any resistance from them?
Quite frankly, no. And probably the reason is because I don't really make the distinction between men and women, because I truly believe men and women have the same skills, they have the same challenges, same issues, not very different. And so if you don't try to make a big deal out of it, then it isn't a big deal. And I have a lot of men in my team, and they are quite fine working with me. And I also check back with them, for validation, whether they, from time to time, I say, hey, is the problem? Do you think I'm being too aggressive? I ask them. So it's like an open thing. And if it is, then they'll also tell me about it.
How do you view that, Ruwindhu? How has it been leading both men and women in your organization?
No, I second what Sandra said. I think it really is in many ways, it's about your starting paradigm as a leader. I think you create what you believe in many ways. So if you go with a preconceived notion, quite often you actually attract that. And that's really been my experience. I think with whoever your starting point of view of wanting to genuinely add value, I think leads from there. And people see through that. I necessarily haven't seen a distinction between female or males in terms of reacting to leadership.
Chandi, would you like to chime in and kind of talk about diversity as an HR professional?
Yeah, definitely. I 100% echo what Ruwindhu was saying. And at the same time, I think, so we've got like so much research done in this area, right? If you read an article from McKinsey, it'll talk about, how important diversity is to a company to increase their market space. And then if you read an article from HBR, they will talk about how important diversity is to increase their business innovation. So obviously, there's a lot of research done to show us how important it is to increase diversity in your organization, but still we keep talking about it. So I think later on, we're going to get into some of the challenges and the best practices that we have. But from an HR perspective, obviously, it's an agenda for all HR, in every organization globally as well.
In a different vein, Sandra, what do you think the strength has been for you and behind your success?
So I'm not really sure whether it is because I'm an only child. I think I've always been pretty sure of myself. I try to push my agenda through. Some people call it me being bossy. Others call it me being aggressive. And I don't mean to be aggressive in a bad way, but it's just my excitement comes out almost, sounding loud and aggressive and waving my hands about the air and all that. So I think that has actually worked well for me because when I believe in something truly, I go all out. And then I suppose it becomes easier for others to see through what I'm saying and to either follow me and help me, champion whatever initiative I was looking for. Because my thing is all about trying to convince others and make them see my point of view. So I'm sort of always, looking for people to join me and say, yes, good stuff.
I'm in a completely different vein, Ruwindhu. One for you. What do you wish you had learned sooner in life?
Yeah, many things, I think. But if there's one thing that I believe would have served me really well in my 20s, I think is not to take myself too seriously. That's the one thing I think you go through. And I try my best to pass this on to everyone that I know who's in their early 20s. It was stressful for me. I think it's even more stressful now for kids coming out of school. Seems like a lot of things are imposed on you, but just telling yourself that it's going to be okay. Believe in yourself.
Any particular words of wisdom that you got from anyone in your family that made a difference, really resonated with you?
Yeah, I guess, my mother, I still recall this vividly. She made it a habit every night to come, tuck me into bed, I'm sure, like with most moms. But she had this particular saying, a bunch of stuff as most moms do. And final thing was really about believe in yourself, right? And that echoed throughout every night. No matter what the bedtime story was or whatever, it was always around, you're special, believe in yourself. So I think that really had a large impact in terms of using myself as a benchmark in whatever I did. So it I think helped get through situations where it wasn't so much about what society had to say about you, but really hold yourself to a high bar, which I'm very grateful for.
Chandi, tell us about, what the key to happiness is in your life.
For me, it's my family, like my 2 children, and to make sure that I'm there for them. And they're only like 13 and 16 now. So I think for me, all my happiness is kind of revolving around them right now. Well, not right now, forever, it'll be like that.
What about you, Sandra?
Well, maybe an only child thing again, but I just need to first also see that my cup is full, that I'm happy and I can give of myself, because otherwise I feel depleted and I feel, and it's also probably because of the fact that I'm a bit of an extrovert and I love relationship. My work is about relationships, right? So, and again, that might have been because of the fact that there were either not too many people, siblings, growing up, or also the fact that I was in boarding school and 100 other kids with me. So I kind of got used to kids from all walks of life, and got pretty comfortable dealing with anyone and everyone, right? So so that's what it is for me, really.
And would you say that work is stressful, or have you gotten into your stride?
No, so it's like this. When I was in my early 20s, I read somewhere, right, and that the little saying really resonated well with me. It was like, choose a job you love and you never have to work a day in your life. And looking back on my 30 years, I think I've just done just that. Because even my husband tells me all the time, your work is your hobby, your work is fun. Everyone knows I love my work, I enjoy my work, and I love working, right? Because for me, I don't separate work out too much. It's not stressful for me if I have to. And my kind of work is almost 24/7, because we have customers around the country, millions of them to serve, 24/7, 7 days a week. And to me, it's just a part of life. I don't find it stressful at all.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourselves. It was such a great pleasure to get to know you better. Thank you so much.
Randula, are you ready?
She says with Edgelord.
Hi, I'm Nikita Samaratunga, and I'll be talking to Randula De Silva on Thriving in the Unconventional on She Slays by Echelon. Can I ask you what trends you're into nowadays?
I am the trend.
Oh, please
Nikita.
say that.
Yes, we'll do.
Today on She Slays, I'll be sitting down with Samadanie Kiriwandeniya to talk about empowering through inclusive finance. Samadanie is the former chairman of the Sanasa Development Bank and the current managing director of Sanasa International. Samadanie, so good to have you here with us today.
Very nice to be with you.
So I'd like to start by talking a little bit about a common theme I saw running through your illustrious career, and that has been one of inclusivity. And this takes me back to an interview I watched a few years ago where you said, I am not a corporate leader, I'm a leader of the people. So can you talk to me a little bit about what made you say that and how that philosophy has influenced the way you work?
Okay, so basically I entered development since I was from the childhood exposed to a birth and growth of a cooperative movement in Sri Lanka, which was spearheaded by my father, but nurtured by about 56,000 voluntary leaders. So I traveled all around the country. I saw how the community can be engaged to determine and design their future. So the inclusivity and the collaborative planning and engaging to design a tomorrow for yourselves has been something that I saw when I was growing up. So what I learned through that childhood experience is that you can create something bigger than what you can see by putting one and one together. If you get more people, more stakeholders involved in designing something that they can build as their development path. So that I think was enhanced by the other learning, whatever the management's learning and development learning that I gathered from universities and other engagement with other career destinations. Everything was probably framed within that experience. that I gathered.
So I read somewhere that Sanasa has such a wide network, something like 1 in every 21 people in Sri Lanka is part of the Sanasa network. So my next question is, what does financial inclusivity mean for you?
Well, any inclusivity means that there are nobody that gets left behind when a community moves forward. So financial inclusivity in that sense is that people who are affected by the financial processes in a country, who are, who will have to be benefiting from a financial system, should be able to, should have a space to access that system and also access products and processes in doses and in modalities that are suitable to them. So financial inclusion is not just enabling access, through digital media or through, expanding networks. It's basically enabling access and enabling spaces for people to determine the kind of products and processes and the doses that they should need for their own benefit.
So you said financial inclusion is making sure no one is excluded.
Yeah.
And it touches and it reaches the communities that are often excluded from formal systems. And a large percentage of the people who make up those groups are women. Sanasa has been very big on microfinance, and microfinance is more often than not related to women and uplifting women. What role do you see development banks playing in supporting rural women entrepreneurs and women's place in society in general?
Well, most banks, not only development banks, even commercial banks nowadays have products for women. There are differentiated kind of packages that are being presented for women customers. But whether the women actually have money to use these products, whether women know have the financial literacy and the banking literacy to engage with this kind of products to get benefits for themselves is a question. So I think all the banks are trying to cater to the female market. One, because there's a number. But there is also a question of whether there is a scalability with that customer segment. So that is when I think you need to work quite a lot with the customer. When you work with the corporate customers or bigger business customers, they are mostly male customers. So female customers have small, pockets. So the banks are not necessarily interested in, creating better and more differentiated products for the customers, because there doesn't seem like there's money to be made.
You mentioned something very interesting, and that was financial literacy. We have seen, I think, worldwide, financial literacy amongst women is lower compared to our male counterparts. How do you think we can improve this situation?
Well, I don't think financial literacy is a problem only for women. I think across all sectors like youth, small businesses, smallholder, farmers, even you will be surprised, even in corporate sector, financial literacy is a problem, is an issue. Like most people are not really, not aware of the kind of products that are being served to them by the financial institutions. They don't know how to negotiate and get the best product for them. They are not necessarily savvy with how to handle money and cashless kind of transactions and things like that. So, but when it comes to small businesses which doesn't have enough money to have their own accountants or someone to help them to support in this space of financial illiteracy, let's say. I think there are many things that we can do. There are organizations that do a lot of things to promote financial literacy. Central Bank is very keen on improving the financial literacy. Banks are doing a lot of training programs. NGOs and other projects are conducting many, investing a lot of money to improve the literacy, financial literacy. But my take on it is that I think we can do better with financial advisory than financial literacy.
I like that you brought that up because that was going to be my next question. Since you stepped down as chairman of Sanasa Development Bank, you took on the role of managing director at Sanasa International, and you've been involved in a host of social enterprise projects. And I read somewhere that you are offering financial advisory services to communities in the North and East. So, firstly, what is the difference between financial advisory and financial literacy?
So, financial literacy is something that comes within. It's basically empowering a customer to learn about numbers, about finance, about the markets, about products, being literate, which takes a long time. Financial advisory is basically someone taking time and trouble to support a person who is trying to get something done from a system, right? In the financial system. So I'm not prioritizing financial advisory over financial literacy. I think both are needed. Financial literacy, if we have a good financial literate community, which is the best thing to have. But currently, most of the small businesses, small women, youth, many people are struggling to establish some business, and they are struggling a lot to get technical competencies, market accessibility, product development, other knowledge, standardization, certification, everything related to business. So while they are struggling and trying to establish their business, if they have to also learn about the entire gamut of financial landscape, I think it will take a long time for our businesses to stabilize. So I think we can do better if we groom another set of bankers and people who are studying economics and accounting to start helping some of these small businesses, hold their hand and walk with them, so that you provide some advisory from the skills that you have, while the small businesses learn about their business and the business related aspects, so that you can walk together. So basically advisory is a short-term dose that you give until the customer is ready to start learning about his numbers.
I know it's still a pilot and it's not being rolled out with a huge group, but could you tell me a little bit about the project you all are implementing?
Yeah. So basically, there are two groups, right? Mm-hmm. There's one group of Sri Lankan youth who are studying, many things related to finance, anticipating that they will end up working in a financial institution. And most of the financial institutions are going towards digitalization. So there won't be so many number of jobs created for the people who are anticipating to join these banks and other financial institutions. So we are looking at a large number of people with a lot of financial knowledge, not having proper jobs to engage that knowledge with. Then there's another group of people which is in the mostly semi-formal or informal market space, who are struggling with small businesses, who do not know how to groom their business into a different scale, because in order for that to happen, your business has to go and negotiate with financial institutions and other stakeholders in a language that is not necessarily familiar for the small businesses. So we can make a match by getting the people who know the subject, who know the language, to start working with these small business people and work as a team. So what I did basically was create a matching meeting place where we created a few small market-based financial advisory packages, where if you are a small business and if you have an issue with your business and you want to talk with a bank or an investor, but you don't have the correct language to do that, and you don't know how to articulate your finance, you know what you do with your business, but you don't know how to articulate in numbers, you make a call and get your personal financial advisor and work with that person to work with the external investor or the banker. So that's usually the corporate customers, big businesses, they have their personal financial advisor. But small scale businesses, they cannot afford to do that. And the solutions that have been provided is one-time financial literacy courses, which are operated by highly paid consultants. So there's no replicability in these things. And by the time small business person has a problem, he or she has already forgotten what he or she learned in a financial literacy training program. So what we are proposing is, having a real life advisory solution where when you have a problem, you make a call and you get the assistance from the group of financial advisors that are available for you in the market.
So you're making access to financial advisory and services accessible to all, or at least right now in this pilot group of people.
In a very affordable fee.
Which is amazing and much needed. I have a question. What has it been like? You were at the helm of Sandra Development Bank for 9 years, and now you've transitioned into working in the development sector more so. How has your working style changed now?
Well, when you are in the board, of course, you make policies and you expect the policies to be implemented by the management and the staff. But when you are out of that sphere, you can actually get involved in execution. I was in the execution before I went to the board, which was interesting to see how things happen and how the small pieces hold at a bigger scale, in a single logic. But then you see also the loose ends. And sometimes organized structures do not necessarily have solutions for those loose ends. So currently what I'm doing is, incubating things that can actually glue the, pieces that are not that should be glued together, that should be working together, but are not necessarily working collaboratively. So I'm designing things that can actually link the dots.
You're designing alternative solutions.
I'm designing. I don't know whether they are alternative, but I'm trying to design solutions.
Why I said this was I was reading one of your reports recently, and what we have seen is COVID-19 and the pandemic has really shaken things up. And I remember you wrote that what is needed now is alternative solutions to especially financial products and services. So I'd like to ask you, what can Sri Lanka do to move in this direction? How can we make financial services more inclusive through these alternative solutions?
Yeah, I think one thing that we should not do is look at alternative solutions in tools, right? And I think we should really design the alternatives that we want to have, not through tools, right? Something that we should be cautious about is that world is changing. Always corporates are creating new and more tools that can be sold to to the market. But if the tools start determining what your lifestyle is going to be, or what kind of a life you should be leading, I think we will end up getting lost as a community. So one thing that we need to do as a community, if Sri Lanka has to move forward, is to figure out what it is that we want to have as individuals and as a group and as a community, right? And then see how best the available tools can help us to get there in a cost-effective way, right? Without compromising the diversity and leaving behind a group of people, right? So that's something I think we should be doing. So alternatives will come if we start really pushing and expanding the parameters and asking what we want and why we want that. So once we have the answers for that, then I think tools is the second thing that we need to do. There is a rush to push digital tools to the community as accessibility, but we don't know whether we are getting the correct digital tools and whether they are actually connecting people or isolating people. So after all the accessibility that you have, if you are not happy and if you are not behaving as a human community, there's no point having too much access and too many tools. So that is where I think alternatives should be handled. That is how I think alternatives should be handled.
Interested in something you said. There's a rush to push these digital tools and methods. If COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's that there is an increasing need to be connected digitally and virtually. So how can we balance these two? Make sure we're not overwhelming communities and we're not alienating them, but also making sure that they are connected to the digital world, which is taking precedence now.
And we should seriously look into hybrid models, like digitalization is good, of course. Improving accessibility is good, and technology has created spaces where, like, most people who were previously excluded, such as women, lactating mothers, young people, they have a voice now and they are seen. But on the other hand, I think there is so much centralization and central delivery of messages, like the market drives how we should be thinking. Of course, we can't stop these things, but on the other hand, we can stop these things also if we start empowering the peripheries and allowing the digital processes so that peripheries get more connected, more organized, more communal, and then let those diverse voices come together in a bigger platform, rather than creating one big platform and determining what you are going to download through that platform to a large mass of people, right? So we can handle digital processes in many different ways, but it starts with empowering individuals, locating them in communities. That's what I think.
I think during your tenure at SDB, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there was a move towards digital platforms. Can you talk to me a little bit about what steps you all took and how you made sure it was inclusive of the community you were serving?
We, as a bank, since although we were created with the cooperative sector, and the bigger focus was actually to provide financing to the Sanasa movement, and also the people affiliated with that group of people. The bank, as a licensed specialized bank, which then later entered into the stock market, had to grow. So when we had to grow and we had to expand our capital base, we had to make money, profit, and become a bank that can compete in the market with a certain scale. We had to think about low-cost ways of doing these things without compromising the access of the community to still be engaged to design the development path of the bank. So what we basically did was consciously made two pillars. One is digital enabling pillar. One is the cooperative pillar.
Okay.
So we decided to empower and enhance and improve the products that we had within the bank for the cooperative sector. So bank will continue to strengthen the capacities of the cooperative sector to be relevant for the community. Meanwhile, create a digital platform which will enable more access by the large mass to the products that are being offered by the bank. So we basically, unlike probably other banks, Sandra Development Bank has the privilege of two platforms, actually three platforms. One is the brick and mortar, like the branch network. We have about 100 branch network now. And then we have the digital platform that can talk to the large mass to use that and engage with the bank. Then we have the cooperative platform, which has about nearly about 500 to 1,000 village-based cooperative societies that can also deliver services. So in that sense, we were able to comprehensively, start a process where we are not falling behind when the banking systems move into digitalization processes. We are into it, but we are also taking the cooperative sector with it.
Yeah. I mean, that is an amazing model. Where do you see it going in the future?
I can't give a definite answer because the banking sector, the path for the banks like Sandra Development Bank is determined by the financial policy of the country and how the financial policy sees the relevance of this kind of institutions like development banks and cooperative banks. How accountable government and financial policy is to ensure that their people are not left behind. So, those things, those bigger policy level things will determine the survival of all kind of banks. But if the bank can organically grow, I think we are the next generation.
Yes, definitely.
Because it's the inclusive banking model. And it's also the cooperative banking model. It's a third kind of model that people are looking for, ethical banking model. But whether we are given the privilege to organically grow that kind of a model is entirely determined by the market and also the financial policy of the country.
I mean, I think in the market, there is this hunger to move away from the mainstream, and the model you have put forward and SDB has put forward is definitely something that there is an appetite for. So I think there is a lot of scope. But I'd like to end by asking you, the Sandra movement has been so closely linked to women's empowerment. Now that you have moved to Sandra International, how do you plan to take that forward in your work?
Sandra International, actually, what we are trying to do is Sandra movement in Sri Lanka has been in operation for the last 50 years. And it's a model that's been studied in other countries. We have a lot of learning in this country that can be shared with other development organizations, especially in South Asia and in African continent. Like some of the places, some of the countries are still grappling with issues that Sri Lanka, dealt with in 1970s and early 1980s. And Sandra has learnings that can be shared. So one of the reasons for the Sandra International to be is to share the inclusive development story of Sandra and its lessons and its best practices with the rest of the international development community, which we have done. Like several countries have embraced that. Then the other thing is to get the best practices of inclusive development from the world back into Sandra. So we have a network of about 3,000 to 4,000 strong cooperatives, village-based cooperatives that can replicate some of these best practices in Sri Lanka, like things like value chain-oriented financing, then cooperative enterprises working with corporates in synergy. So some of these things, fair trade, businesses. So these are some of the learnings that we can bring to the country so that Sansa movement can practice it and we can share it with the rest of the development workers. So it's an interface between the global
And the
world and the local realities.
And it's something that y'all have been doing for decades now.
Yeah.
Samadanie, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
It's very nice to be with you all.
I have Samadanie Kiriwandeniya on She Slays Rapid Fire. Hi Samadanie,
Hi.
are you ready?
Let's see.
Who is your inspiration and why?
Lord Buddha.
Why?
I always find an answer for the questions I have.
What would you say to your younger self?
I don't know.
What are things you dislike?
Dishonesty.
What is your favorite quote or words to live by?
You create yourself.
What does being female mean to you?
I suppose human.
Tell me one word that best describes you.
Water.
What is one missed opportunity that you wish you could have had a second chance at?
Having another child.
What does equality mean to you?
Respect.
What is your deepest fear?
Dying unhappily.
As a woman, what do you expect in a leader?
Teamwork.
What is the one thing you wish more people knew about women in organizations?
That they have a lot to contribute and they are capable.
What are your goals for the future?
Live more closer to nature.
There is injustice happening, and how do you stop it? You have to do something about it. But when you're a child, you don't know how. It's just vague.
We have here in She Slays today Ambika Satkunanathan. She's a human rights advocate. She was also a human rights commissioner. Welcome to the program, Ambika.
Thank you very much for having me.